And Julie, later on yesterday evening, Spurs game was called off, and it's the sequence of events and who made what decision at what time that seems to be a bit of an issue here, because Spurs said they weren't going to play the game. UEFA only confirmed it this morning. Meanwhile, Rennes were very unhappy because they landed in London after being told the game was going to go ahead. Today now, Vitesse Arnhem, who are playing Mura in the other game this evening to potentially qualify and are dependent on how Spurs might get on, are unhappy as well. So it's a messy situation, but it's undoubtedly a mess, Brian.
It is a messy situation, but, you know, UEFA have had to deal with this situation the last couple of years, and you'd have to say in their favour, they did very well to manage the competitions and to get them played under the circumstances of COVID. When you think back of, we had about a 3-month break where no games, and then they got back playing matches and played them as knockout ties on a 1-game basis rather than 2 legs. This situation, I'm surprised something like this hasn't happened before now, given, and it's the fault of UEFA and FIFA to a degree, in the demands they're putting on the players and the clubs to play more and more games. The clubs are happy because it's generating more finance for them, but it's not very good for the players because their bodies are stressed, the physical demands on them, the psychological demands on them are becoming much more intense. And those psychological stresses and mental stresses have been there during COVID because of what Conte has said about the families. And he looked like a very stressed manager there, about his own health and about his family's health. You can understand that. I'm surprised that the clubs have dealt with it so well, given that I would say that there hasn't been the same take-up of vaccines in Britain as there has been
certainly
in Ireland.
The football community as well.
Yeah, well, the football community and the general public, I'd say. I think people in Ireland have been more compliant and we're in a better situation. But with the new variant, we haven't seen what's going to happen.
But that's the thing, you know, and look, there's a point you're making about the fixtures, and it's hard to see where a game like this gets played. And you have to take, you know, Vitesse's situation and their complaints seriously as well. They find that, you know, the sporting integrity is being challenged there, because if the game is played in 2 weeks' time, Tottenham will know what they'll need to do. But in the bigger picture, Brian, like, in general, this thing is still going and it's getting bigger and it's still there. Football-wise, we're seeing empty stadiums everywhere again. And now Leicester, even, who we're going to talk about in a few moments, they've got COVID cases as well as Spurs. So it just seems to be the clouds are gathering again in that front. Yeah,
it does seem that way. And when you think at this time of the year, for British football, where it's particularly intense, hectic time, a number of games the clubs have to play. Spurs don't have any spare weeks where they have only 1 game between now and the end of the year. UEFA are saying the match has to be played. It's a very awkward position. I would actually think, from Spurs' point of view and Conte's own point of view, he mightn't be too unhappy if Spurs had to pull out and let Vitesse go. I would think that you know, the competition for him, it hasn't been great. With the players he's had a good look at them already. They play very purely against Mura. He has had that opportunity to have a look at the players, make his mind up about them now. And I think
maybe it was a double bluff on their part. Maybe kick us out, then we wouldn't.
Well, not by him personally, but I think overall for the club, they wouldn't be that upset if the solution came, the Spurs forfeited that place.
We'll have to see how that pans out. It's going to be interesting to see where they might fit that game in. The draw is on Monday, so, you know, it'll be an either or, you'd imagine.